It's a slow day, so reminiscing, if you will, on earlier days. So, what was it, 1976? My mother, my stepfather, got a puppy for my brother Tracy, and we named it a collie dog, and we named him Streak. And when everybody was like, what should we name him? What should we name him? And I'm like, well, he has a streak running down his nose. Why don't we call him Streak? And so Tracy was like, yeah, Streak, Streaker. And so um, we named him Streaker. So Tracy would call him Streaker, and I would call him Streak. And I pretty much took care of him. And my mother used to make dinner every night, like most women back then. Women were totally different back in the 70s, more focused on their family. So my mother would make dinner, and we would all have dinner together as a family. And, so we'd have the meat, the potatoes, and the vegetables, and there was nothing, missing from our plates. But in our family, we all had to sit at the table. You couldn't serve yourself. My mother put the food on our plates. You had to eat what she put on your plate. You had to ask to be excused from the table. And once you were excused, we were assigned dish duty. And so my stepfather sat at the head of the table, rightfully so. And my youngest brother, Sean, sat across from him at the other end of the table. So, and then to my stepfather's right, it was always Tracy, then me, and then my sister Tony. So all the T's were on one side. And then my mother to his left, rightfully so. My sister Kim, who always was right across the table from me, eye to eye. And then my sister Melissa, and my sister Tony always used to cater to my brother Sean since he was born. That was her, like her baby. She loved him. And I was always closest to my brother Tracy. And so one day, we no more than sat at the table, and my sister Kim, who always had a problem with me, she did the across the table, and she said, your dog is dead outside. And Streaker was behind me, outside in the garage, and my ear was always tuned to the garage while I was sitting at the table, and I was always with Streak when I wasn't in school. And so she did your dog is dead outside. And the first time she did it, I jumped up off the table, kicked my chair back, and I went and I looked, and he's right there on the other side of the door looking at me. And I, told him I'll be out as soon as I'm done eating. And so I go back to the table, and my stepfather's like, what was that all about? And I'm like, oh, well, Kimmy just said that Streak was dead, but he's okay. All right, well, don't get up off the, away. So yeah, I had to sit at the table, finish my meal. So the next night comes around, and she's kicking at my feet from underneath the table. And so I go, what is your problem? And she's like, what? I'm like, stop touching my feet. And so my stepfather's like, just put your feet back behind your chair somewhere. So I wrapped my feet around the back of the chair so she couldn't touch me. And then she did it again. Your dog is dead outside. But this time I went to lunge across the table because I was going to choke the fucking bitch out, okay? And my stepfather's just sitting here watching the interaction between the two of us. I'm like, you don't say that stuff. So a couple days go by, and you know, it's like winter time. And I come in through the garage after school and I notice this streak is not like all over me like he usually is. I'm like, well, where is he? So I'm like, is he in here? You know, is he inside? Oh, he couldn't be inside because they didn't like his nose running up against their leg. You know, when he comes over for attention and his nose touching their legs or their hands or something, you know, that they didn't want that. So we had to always stay out in the garage. And so I go in the house, I'm like, is Streak in here? Nope, Streak's not in the house. So I go back out in the garage. I'm like, well, where could he be? You know, the door was shut. Like, did he get out? So I go back in the house and I'm like, well, did somebody take him for a walk? Where is he? And then, so I turn the garage light on and I'm like, maybe he's hiding in here. He was on his blanket. It was a freezing below zero fucking day, okay? He's curled up on his blanket out there and he's like in shock. You know, he's not fucking moving, all right? And so I go in the house and I go after my sister, Kim, who kept saying, your dog is dead out there. And I'm like, you killed my dog. And so, you know, I'm ready to take her down. And my mother grabs hold of both of us and she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, he's dead out there. So I go out, my mother takes both of us out in the garage and then I have to show her. And so she tells my sister to go get the flashlight. And my sister comes back with a flashlight. My mother flashes the light by his eyes. And she goes, nope, there's still life in there. He's not dead yet. And so she says, put your hands on him and, you know, talk to him and I'll be right back. So I'm like rubbing his face and, you know, patting him and everything and all this other stuff and keeping eye contact with him. And she comes back with blankets and everything. We get him in the house and, you know, she's wraps him all up in blankets to get him warm and everything. And he's not responding to us, but he's, you know, she keeps checking his eyes. And so finally he makes a little bit of movement and then she gets him, you know, first something to drink and then she gives him small bites to eat and stuff like that. And slowly but surely he comes back, but she doesn't want him out there. And so she sends me down to John Friel's to walk down there, which I did pretty much every day to get milk and shit. And she said, go ask John if he's got a box or something and we'll, you know, put him in a box here in the house until he's better again. And so I walk down to the store and I, you know, go to Johnny Friel. I go, is your father here? I need to talk to him about something. It's really important. And so he takes me back to his father who owns the store. And, you know, I tell him what's going on. And he said, oh, yeah, definitely, you know, we can get you a box. You know, what size do you want? What do you think? You know, he calls my mother. And so anyways, he sends Johnny in, you know, says, Johnny, take the truck, bring her up to the house with a box and see if they need anything else, blah, blah, blah. And, I mean, that's the way it was back then, okay? Like, you just went to it was your community and people were there for you, okay? I don't know how many times we piled wood for other people. never expected a fucking dime in return. It was just the way, everything operated in our community. We just did shit for other people. And I remember my mother grabbing my sister's arm right by the elbow, and she said, "Get in here, we're going to have a conversation." And she cut right into her about saying things like that, what she was doing. Gonna die, Streak's gonna die, your dog is dead, Streak's gonna die. And then he almost did. Almost like she wanted it, willed it to happen. And my mother said, "We don't do that stuff. We don't will things to cause harm to something like that." And, luckily he came out okay. He ended up dying. It was a couple years later. Some kids, probably her, teasing the fuck out of him when he was chained to his doghouse out back and he snapped his neck. It was probably you, Kimmy, because you are the evil fucking seed in our family. But you can't explain this shit to people here in New York. That if you're raised a certain way, structured in a certain way, that stuff does not go away. It stays with you for a lifetime. And, if my mother instilled in me that you never give up on someone, even if you think they're dead, when there's a possibility that they might not be dead, you hold on to that faith and that belief that there's this slight possibility that there's, that something's just not right with the overall picture. And so I hold on to what she taught me. Just like when my dog Bees died, I held on to the belief that just maybe, he wasn't really dead, okay? I love him so, so, so much. And in return for what my mother instilled in me in that belief, the mockery, I get the mockery. Well, we've watched what you were doing with that dog. I did what my mother taught me to do. You never, ever, ever give up on something you love. If you love something so, so deeply, and that's a living person or a creature or even a tree, you never, ever, ever give up on that. You hold tight to that strongest bond that you have with that person, with that animal, with that living thing, and you try and you try and you try to make sure that death does not encompass the thing that you love so, so much. So I got a lot of strong values and beliefs from my mother, my father, my stepfather that I still hold on today. And I still believe, as I did as a child, that my sisters are fucking evil as fuck. And I wonder where they came from, because they aren't anything like my mother or my stepfather or my real father. They're fucking purebred fucking evil seeds. Do you have anything like that going on in your world today? Just recognizing evil.